Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of one-on-one treehouse session. Today we have the wonderful Ro Lamb with us.
That's
Ro,
good.
you mentioned back on our previous a live party that that you do a lot of poetry and that
Yeah.
you combine. I'm so curious about your journey combining your loves of poetry and comics. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about your background in poetry?
Yeah. So poetry, I tell people poetry is that's my first love. I just remember I was sitting at a high school basketball game and a friend of mine was writing in a notebook. And I looked and I said, "Man, what are you doing?" He said, "Man, I'm writing poetry." I said, "You doing what?" Like, "I'm writing poetry." And he showed it to me. And I was like, "How do you do this?" And he was like, "I don't." He just put words together. I was like, "Oh, that's what you do?" So I just started, writing and, just sharing my feelings. A lot of my early poems were just like, talking about the frustrations I had as a teen, and I just started from there. I just started looking up different forms and trying, haikus and sonnets and things of that nature, and just practicing and just playing with words. And so that's how it began.
Oh man, that's kind of reminds me of myself when I was back in high school for sure. I used to even back in like middle school, I always used to write poetry. I was actually my school's like poet laureate.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I think I was like all Long Island. Like I won like all the poetry competitions. So like
Word.
so I was known around like all of my Long Island, like my island,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
being like the poet, the poem guy.
yeah,
But yeah, it definitely means a lot. And I think at the time I was just always trying to do something different with my poems. And I mean,
yeah,
like, so I understand when you're trying to switch around different styles, but I was trying to like do crazy things with, even the formats and the
yeah,
way it's supposed to be read. And I got really into it.
yeah,
But I think that's kind of where my creativity started. And that was the first thing I used to write and really drew me into writing, being creative and thinking
yeah,
about what can I do differently? What can I really, uh, how can I really entice a reader, really,
yeah,
and convey a message? Um, so how did you, and you say, I think you said you're a poet first, but like, how did you transition out to comics? When did you make that switch? And
yeah. So I mean, I went from this was my trajectory. I did poetry, and then a friend of mine who made beats, he saw some of my poetry and said, "Bro, you should rap." So then I started doing music, and then from there, I started thinking about, man, I want to write a novel. So I started writing a novel, and I was writing like short stories, and then I came across, which I already was reading comic books, but it didn't really dawn on me that people actually wrote comic books. I just thought, the artists would sort of put it together. So when I realized that writers were actually writing comic books, I was like, yo, I should try that. So the interesting thing about poetry and comic books, though, is that there's this relationship, like when you start talking about like the economy of words, right? And so with poetry, you depending on how you write, what I'm saying, you're trying to say a lot with a little bit of words, right? And that's the same thing that happens, at least for myself, that's the same thing that happens with comic books, is that I'm trying to say a lot in the least amount of words as possible. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to cover up all the art and do all that. And so there's like this weird, interesting relationship that they have with one another. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, and it seems almost like poetry is like a gateway into comics, but
Right, right,
but it's
right.
and I think there's something, yeah, particularly about word choice about
Yeah,
poetry that
for
it
sure.
almost really opens up a lot of writing. A lot of the writing principles and basis is
Yeah,
founded in poetry,
yeah,
and yeah, and I think almost everybody starts learning poetry for that reason in English classes and
yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah,
So it's amazing to kind of also hear your trajectory to kind of do that. You mentioned music. I wanted to
yeah.
also touch about uh, the relationship between poetry and rap. Was it a smooth
Mm.
transition? Do you kind of, add some musicality, or was it more of the lyrical writing was poetry based, and then you just bring, you kind of just like sing it? How does that kind of work?
Yeah. So I was taught that rap actually stands for rhythm and poetry. And so rapping is poetry, you know what I'm saying? And so that was just a seamless, transition over. So what would happen though is I would wait for my friend to make the track. And then when he made the track, then I would take that and I would um put the words to the music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and that's an interesting relationship as well, because depending on how the flow is going, that depends on, you know, how many words you use, the syllables you use. And then it's a lot of artistry and science that goes into creating, you know, a rap verse, you know what I'm saying, a rap song, you know, so to speak. So yeah, it's
No,
definitely connected.
definitely. Do you anticipate that you're going to combine maybe any of the or all three between poetry, music, and comics, or specifically rapping? Do you see a way to combine all of them for maybe your next project or an upcoming new project of yours?
I do see, I don't know about music. Now that you say that, I think there's a way to do it. But I definitely have been thinking about a combination of poetry and artwork. I actually talked to Kayla Rainey about that. We've been sort of playing around with some ideas, and wondering how we can make that work. You know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to play around with that. I don't know when we're going to start like really officially doing that. But I'm excited to see, you know, what we can do with my words and then taking some of her art, you know what I'm saying, and combining it and just seeing, you know, where we go from there. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely think that there's a relationship that can be played with there, and I'm excited to see what it is.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think who better than you, bro? Who better than you to do it? You know what I'm
Word,
saying? Bring it to
word.
life. I haven't really seen it done before, and I think it's all about bringing, new talent, new voices, new perspective to the genre, to the
Yeah,
comic book industry. And I think you're,
absolutely.
you're, you're a wonderful addition. I think you only have one book out, but you're going to do many more, right, bro?
They coming, they on the way.
Oh man, I can't wait for it. Um,
Word.
is there anything that you kind of want to, end off with? There's new fans out there, new people that you want to kind of talk to them, like new creators. Any advice you can kind of give?
Yeah, you know, my advice, I say this to everybody. Um, I think that the most important thing is to start now, you know, not to wait until, you know, it's perfect, or, you know how to do it, or, you think, you've mastered whatever that craft is. I always tell people, like, start now, start before you're ready. And just keep pushing and keep working at whatever it is that you're working on, because eventually, that's going to manifest into something. You know what I'm saying? And so I just say start now, don't wait.